Hello, 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 and welcome back to IVF in Your Pocket, your waiting room companion. In today's episode, we are going over some really important key tips, pro tips that you should know before starting IVF. If you are on the journey, that's okay. You're listening in and getting these tips and reviewing and seeing that you are covering some of these tips. So let's just get right to it. The first tip sounds maybe obvious, is to get as informed and educated as possible before going in. And you want to do this in a way where you get information in digestible chunks. So you may read some articles or talk to a friend or listen to a podcast. You want to do that slowly over the course of a few months. You will unfortunately probably have that time as you're sitting on a wait list or waiting for your clinic to start. It's just, there's so much information out there. It's really important to be able to digest some of the information about what is so important to getting through the IVF journey. As part of that research, you want to know all the tests that are done out there, both during retrieval, before you go into a retrieval, or if you're just gearing up for a transfer, you're using donor embryo, donor egg, donor sperm, you didn't go through the retrieval process, or you are doing the journey with a surrogate, you want to definitely make sure you have a sense of all the tests that are done before transfer as well. So there's quite an exhaustive list. So you want to know what the tests are, such as an ERA, a hysteroscopy test, the saline ultrasound, the CD138, which is an endometrial biopsy, the Emma Alice. There's quite a few different tests that basically are looking at the uterus, looking at the cells in the uterus. There's, of course, a lap procedure, which is a really big deal if you're struggling with something like endometriosis. You want to know what is all out there, particularly if you're a listener outside of the United States. You want to get clear about what is offered where you live, and B, what your clinic is willing to or does, because not all clinics do all tests. The standard testing in the US, of course, is a ton of blood work and additional tests like an HSG to test the fallopian tubes, and of course ultrasound. So there's quite a few tests that happen before you get started, but then there's a wide range of tests that you can do before a transfer. You just want to know what those are. So it does take some research. I'm going to try to do an additional episode on that alone. I might try to invite an RE on the show to talk about that as well. In addition to that, you want to know what protocols your clinic uses, what your RE is suggesting for you, why they're suggesting that, and the different types of retrievals. As I said earlier in another episode, there are several different types of starts for the stimulation. So if you haven't listened to some of those episodes, it's worth going back and listening to those, particularly the one about how to prepare for IVF physically. Okay, another really great tip is to get your physical care kit prepared beforehand. And this can kind of be a fun activity. That's kind of reviewing, are you going to do the shots? If you're the person who's going through a retrieval or going to support someone going through a retrieval, or if you are just going to be doing a transfer and or both, you're going to be doing some shots. So you want to know, are you going to start off doing those shots? Is that what you want to try? You do need to be flexible. So you might decide you're going to do your own shots and then decide that doesn't really work for you. So you're going to have either a service come in, like Tracy Round, who we had on last week, is part of a great service that does that, if that's available to you, or get a friend or partner to do that. So part of your care kit can include things like going out and buying some new ice packs. Yay! You got to make it exciting where you can. That kind of stuff. Maybe investing in a good hot pad, Or they make these great kind of water bottle bags. Now that heat, you can put hot water in them. So just thinking, maybe investing in some nice gauze, alcohol, swabs, all the stuff you might need physically. And those are some the supplies you might need, and getting them set. And some people like to get containers to organize their meds and make it into a fun project, or just have your place where you're going to do your shots and get a whole ritual. It's really nice to have that before you start, and can be fun. You also, another big tip that I talk about often on the podcast is securing your support network. So is that a therapist? Is that a group? Is that both? Is that reconnecting with a friend who's been really supportive for you along the journey? And then along with that, thinking very clearly, I think before you go into IVF is great, but of course you can do this anytime along the journey. Who do you want to tell? Who do you want to tell? Do you want to disclose that you're on the journey? It's a lot easier to start with obviously not disclosing at first, and then you can always add people in to your circle. It's a little harder to go the other way where you've told everybody and then you realize in the middle of the journey, ooh, I don't like giving updates to everyone, or I don't like everyone thinking that the only thing I am right now is IVF. So you want to think really carefully about that, and you really want to think about that with your partner before you start the process. It's better to think about this before. If you know someone who's about to start, give them that, send them that tip, because it just saves a lot of heartache. It can, if you're finding yourself in a situation where you have that one family member that just makes inappropriate, painful comments that is making the journey harder, that you wish you wouldn't have told. So you have, this is your experience. You get to decide who you tell about it and when. So really important to think about that before getting into it. That's a big topic that I see in my private practice therapy. People coming in, it's a lot of the times it's around what's coming up with people who haven't been supportive. So that's a really important thing to think about. So another really important tip is, and this sounds a little depressing, but we just got to be real here, is it's really important to go in expecting that there might be something disappointing, some kind of loss along the way. And I'm going to tie this in with being mindful of like this kind of toxic positivity mindset. Now, I'm not saying that redirection isn't important. I'm not saying that gratitude isn't important, but it's one thing to tell yourself and kind of keep telling yourself, this is going to work out, this is going to be fine. And versus, I'm going to focus on a gratitude journal, or I'm going to incorporate more self-care activities. That's a really great way to shift from the intensity of IVF. But it's really helpful to know that most people have some kind of experience of disappointment on this journey. And that really shows up a lot during the attrition, the loss, the actual loss that happens for a lot of people after a retrieval. That's not always after a retrieval. That can be frozen eggs that don't make it. If you had frozen your eggs and now they're thawing, that there were less than you expected. That can be donor eggs not fertilizing at the rate that you had hoped. So it doesn't, however you're coming into this, whether you've done a retrieval or not, there's usually some attrition, there's some loss. So it is helpful to kind of expect that there might be something disappointed, and then to know how you're going to cope with it. So, oftentimes it's really helpful to go in with some kind of self-care plan, and really important to have your support in place for those moments of disappointment. And then finally, another really, really important tip, I think this might be one of the most important tips emotionally, is to get invested now in something that isn't about IVF. This is a great time to pick up a new hobby or a hobby you've put off, so that when you do have these disappointing moments or these really frustrating moments, or this process is taking longer than anticipated, because it almost always does. It almost always takes a long time. You have something else that isn't about IVF, so that your whole identity isn't this journey or the hope of this family you've been waiting for, and that you can feel empowered in these other things that you have found that help define you. That could be maybe you started doing long hiking walks. That could be reading a series that a book series you never thought you would pick up. That could be starting something completely new like watercoloring, or just something, whatever fills your cup, whatever you felt like, I didn't want to try that, I didn't have time. Now this is the time to make time so that you have something else going. Okay, so those are a lot of pro tips. Let's quickly summarize. The first tip is to get really informed about what's out there. Just get educated, including knowing all the tests that are available just out there and what your clinic performs. Making sure you have a care kit of supplies and know how you're going to take care of your body during the physical part of the journey. Making sure emotionally you have prepared the right supports. That could be a group therapy or a friend. And getting clear about who you want to tell and who you may not disclose. And then expecting loss. Making sure you're redirecting in ways that work for you. And then investing in something that you can really throw your energy to so your whole world doesn't become about IVF. That concludes our episode for today. I want to hear from you. What pro tips would you include? And if you want to work with me in California, if you're in California, you can go ahead and find that form on the show notes and check out my website, alexandragarystock.com, or find me at alexandrapsychotherapy@gmail.com. And until next time, remember, you are not alone.